There is no surprise more magical than the surprise of being loved. Charles Morgan. Bending Not Breaking, a Patreon exclusive. And we're back with another episode of Bending Not Breaking. I'm Sunshine.
And this is Ben.
And because it's a Patreon exclusive, specifically a Max's Choice.
Max's Choice.
Guess who's here with us?
We have a guest?
You don't have to guess. He's going to be speaking a lot more this episode because Max chose Over the Hedge. Max, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are y'all today?
Oh, you said well and not good. I'm glad that you're well. Are you good also?
I'd like to think that I am a good person, yes.
I think you're good.
That's up for our patrons to decide.
You're not necessarily inherent. I think people are inherently good.
Yeah.
But like, am I a good person? I think that.
Yeah, Max is a good person.
I think
Most
everyone
of the
has
time.
the ability to be a good person. I think it fluctuates.
Yeah, I'm not talking about the ability.
Moments,
I'm saying he is.
Pud Gerson.
Yep. And Max chose this month for us to watch Over the Hedge.
Over
2006
the
animated.
Hedge.
Is it a classic?
Interesting
Would we call
choice.
it a classic?
I wouldn't call it a classic.
Is it DreamWorks' best film of all time?
No.
Shrek. People love Shrek.
Is it the greatest Eugene Levy, Catherine O'Hara vehicle out there?
No.
Also no.
Not even close. Schitt's Creek is so good.
Yeah, why aren't you choosing that for Max's Choice?
Because this is the greatest Eugene Levy, Catherine O'Hara vehicle out there.
Are you really going to stand on that?
I mean,
No.
Is that going to be the...
I mean, like best in show.
Literally, all they gave Catherine O'Hara to say is "Jeepers."
That's it, right? She got paid so much money to do so little.
We don't know how much she got
I
paid.
don't even know who she was.
She
was Eugene Levy's wife for the Porcupines, the Porcupine parents.
Oh.
Yeah. Just a little
She's
bit
great.
just a little bit of, what are their names? Let's see if I can find them. Lou and Penny.
Yeah, I knew
Lou
Penny.
and Penny.
I knew Penny was one of them.
And-
Penny Porcupine.
And then the daughter possum, Heather, Avril Lavigne.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Having to play dead certainly makes things so complicated.
Wow. So complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just possums trying to keep their head above water, you know?
There should have been a love interest for Heather in this movie, and she just says, hey, you could be my boyfriend.
Yeah.
That's not how the actual song goes, but
I also think that song came out after.
maybe she was inspired by her
Maybe
role.
close to.
Maybe she was inspired by her role in Over the Hedge.
All the voices sound like a little weird, a little bit off in this movie.
I agree. Like I
like
was
they,
like,
you're like, that's Bruce Willis if they sped it up a little bit and made it a little higher pitched.
that's how I felt about Eugene Levy and Catherine O'Hara.
And Steve Carell. So I think that's probably what they did a little bit was it seems like they sped it up a little bit. And then Gary Shandling, R.I.P.
R.I.P. Yeah. Can we, how we just named some superstars.
DreamWorks has that ability to pull in actors into some very
And
mediocre
we haven't even mentioned
movies.
William Shatner yet.
Shatner, Thomas Hayden Church, who's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Nick Nolte?
Allison Janney
Right.
is in this movie.
You go, CJ.
As I like her in almost everything. I hate her in this. Not like her performance, just her character.
Right. Well, you're
Is she the
supposed
HOA
to.
lady?
She is the HOA
Oh,
lady.
God. She's terrorist.
She's the villain. Well, she and Nick Nolte, not Nick Nolte.
Thomas Hayden Church.
Yes. Nick Nolte's the bear.
Yes. Also kind of a villain.
Kind of a villain.
Wow, is this a tri-villain movie?
Yeah, there's three.
How many tri-villain movies are there out there?
Well, there's a few, mostly Spider-Man 3, pretty bad. Also with Thomas Hayden Church as one of the villains.
Maybe Thomas Hayden Church is only good as a villain if he's one of three.
No, that movie is bad.
I haven't seen it.
Spider-Man 3 is not good.
I haven't. Name a superhero movie, and I'll tell you a movie I haven't seen.
You've never seen any superhero movie?
I haven't seen many of them. I've seen probably 4% of them.
Black Panther,
Nope.
Endgame,
Nope.
Iron Man.
Yes.
Okay. There's one.
That we just hit our 4% clip.
There we go. That's the one. That's the one superhero movie.
1 out of 3 is 4%.
Donnie
right?
Darko.
No.
Is that a super... What?
Yeah, it's a
Really?
superhero movie. Absolutely.
That...
Oh,
okay.
Absolutely.
I'm going to call that up.
I'm gonna do it.
What
Horror-
lens did we
horror
watch
flick.
this through?
Surprise!
I'm so surprised.
That I kind of liked it.
You're surprised that you kind of liked it?
Yeah. was not expecting to like this movie.
I like this movie fine.
It was fine. That's
my pitch was to do this movie through a lens of pleasant surprise, but we decided to broaden it a little bit to include all types of surprise. How many types of surprise are there beyond pleasant?
Any sort of
unpleasant
surprises.
surprises.
Yeah. I mean, you can just add any sort of adjective in front of it, and then you have that type
A
of
terrifying surprise.
Fluffy surprise?
surprise. Yeah.
Fluffy surprise.
Yeah.
That could exist.
Yes.
It's like when the dog in the movie wants to play. It's a fluffy surprise.
That's when the bear
Play?
shows up in your nightmare.
Play?
A fluffy surprise.
Ah. All right. Well, we've covered a bunch of different surprises in this movie already.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So that's the end of the episode.
I like a food surprise when
And
someone's like,
thank
"Here's
you
nachos."
for joining us.
That's a surprise.
But food isn't an adjective.
No, but it's still a surprise. It's pleasant when someone says,
Here's some nachos.
"Here's some nachos." Ha! I'm surprised by these nachos.
Today, well, it doesn't matter because time is a ceaseless object.
It's relative.
But recently, I celebrated an important food surprise anniversary.
Hanukkah?
No, that was more of an oil surprise than a food surprise.
I see.
But recently, I celebrated a food surprise anniversary. It was on, I believe, December 30th of 2013 that my buddy Michael and I were hanging out,
How does one remember these things? Continue.
enjoying ourselves, and suddenly a pizza arrived at our doorstep. And it was a great food surprise, and we found out that another friend of ours had ordered us a pizza from many miles away.
But you had tweeted like, "Oh, anyone want to buy us a pizza?"
Yeah, I think something like that happened, and somebody bought us a pizza to be delivered to our Michael's address.
Surprise.
Wow. I love surprises.
So yeah, all that to say, I do like a food surprise.
Well, Max, I think you're going to surprise us this time with your exceptional recap of the movie. You only get 30 seconds.
That's fine. That should
And-
be plenty.
And you're going to nail the entire movie, all the details that happen. You're going to help us remember everything because I forgot, and I'm only going to be able to talk about whatever you talk about. So here we go. On your mark, get set. 30 seconds on the clock. Go.
RJ is a raccoon on a mission. After a run-in
Still
with,
going with it.
well, you can't interrupt me in the midst of my 30-second recap.
That's 10 seconds.
In the midst, after a run-in with Vincent the Bear, RJ loses all of the bear's hibernation food and has a week to get all the food back, or else Vincent the Bear is going to kill him.
15 seconds
That's
left.
the plot.
He heads to a suburb where he finds a bunch of foragers, including a turtle, some porcupines, and other animals, and they decide, as
5 seconds.
a family, they're going to go try to collect a bunch of food in a week from all the suburb people with trash and,
And
stuff.
stop.
And all kinds of chaos happens.
You got through like the first, 10 minutes?
He's really good at summarizing the IMDb plot.
Yeah.
like the description of the plot without.
All you have to do...
Giving any
if you-
spoilers.
yeah, and that's what I do. It's important not to give spoilers.
No, we're giving spoilers
The
because we're
whole
talking
point
about
is that we
the
give
show.
spoilers.
See, but we're going to be talking about it for the next, 45 minutes. So, why do I have to give a recap if we're just going to be talking about it anyway?
Why do we do recaps?
Thank you.
Cover the whole episode because we tend to dive into specific moments, and so we try to give an overview of everything that happened from point A
Again,
to point B.
patrons,
Interesting.
I would encourage you, at least for Max's Choice episodes, find out what piece of media we witnessed, and then go enjoy that piece of media, and then listen to the episode. Don't rely on, me to make sense in a recap. By now, you should know that.
We could always just make up for it and all do recaps just to make sure we hit
No,
everything.
I
no,
don't
we
think-
already Ben and I we do enough recaps.
Yeah.
And
I
that's not
agree.
what the patrons want. They don't want more recap. They want more.
They want quick recap.
Right, that's which I delivered.
Debatable.
Surprise is an emotion that a person might feel if something unexpected happens. For example, a person may feel surprised at a loud, sudden noise, like the popping of a balloon, or they may feel surprised at the outcome of an event. The feeling of surprise can be both good or bad, depending on the circumstance. Thank you. Simple Wikipedia.
Nailed it.
Wait, simple Wikipedia is a thing now?
Yeah, simple.wikipedia. I think it really takes complex issues and just puts in a little bow.
I didn't know we needed that. Is there a simple Wikipedia page for Wikipedia?
I don't know.
I doubt it. Let's find out later. If you
I
wanna
wouldn't be
you want to do a
surprised.
Max's choice on Wikipedia one day, we
That
can
sounds
dive
miserable.
into it.
How would I do a recap of Wikipedia?
I don't know. As long as you don't read the
You're just gonna read the description.
of a butterfly
dramatically.
Yeah. That's,
Sunshine.
yes.
Let's listen as Max tells us about his big moment of surprise as he watched this movie.
I like to listen.
What's a thing that came up for you around surprise, Max?
Well, you know, like I'm like your special guest, and I'm mostly here to just facilitate and react to y'all's conversation as the experts of diving into lenses and things.
Max, we always ask our guests first what they
lenses
notice.
and things could be a linens and
Every
things.
single time.
Well, I didn't know that.
Linens and things. Is that like a store?
I believe so.
Was
yes.
it in this movie?
Sponsor us.
Because if not,
Sponsor us, linens and things. All right. I wrote some things down because I figured this was going to be a tough movie.
wow. I thought there was plenty.
All right. Moments of surprise. And away we
Go.
go.
What's going on?
One thing that surprised me, I know that like I'm going to look at this through a different angle than I imagine the two of y'all. But like, what were things that surprised me? Not necessarily what were some times that the characters were surprised. But did y'all notice that they cut to these shots of Earth from outer space like more than once as like as a way of storytelling?
Like the Cheeto Puff.
The
or
Cheeto Puff.
Dorito Puff, like
The light
Atomic
explosion.
bomb.
Yeah.
When
the light explosion.
when Hammy, Steve Carell's squirrely character, takes a sip of caffeine, we get the outer space shot of planet Earth slowing down.
And stopping.
Like, why did they use that as a storytelling element? What a
That
ridiculous...
was to show how fast he was able to go.
No, but that was a thing they went back to again and again and again, is this outer space. Like, why? What a weird choice.
Why not?
And then there's like
It worked.
There's a shot of like a satellite getting exploded.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is.
It's very much just like a.
That's a surprising thing to me.
Why was it surprising, Max? What made that surprising?
That's just like some directors making a choice. Like, oh, we're going to animate outer space multiple times in this movie about the suburbs and like use it as like almost a plot driver to make people understand what's happening in this movie. It just, I don't know. It was a little over the top for me.
I don't know. Maybe all Lord Asriel needed was the Pellet 3000 to open up the new worlds.
I don't
think that's a stretch.
understand that reference.
Yeah.
Was that a barbecue not breaking reference?
Barbecue not break. No, that was a.
I do love barbecue.
I jumped over to His Dark Materials and the Golden Compass.
So good. I'm a big fan. Yeah.
Can we talk about? I don't know why they did that. I don't.
That was surprising to me.
I was not surprised by it, nor was...
It felt like it fit
it
in there.
just, yeah, it felt...
I was one time I was like, okay, fine. But then when they used that, they used at least 4 or 5 different shots of planet Earth from outer space.
Can we talk about the different emotions that people feel when feeling surprised?
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
what
yeah,
really
yeah, yeah.
triggered this for
I'm
me
glad
is
I'm glad that my talking point brought us to this point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure did.
So I'm speaking of Max's surprise in seeing the worlds, and I'm also thinking of the Hedge showing up after a winter of hibernating. Like this, your world just kind of utterly being changed after going to sleep and waking back up, and the surprise that comes with that. And so, what are those emotions that you feel, or that you feel like these characters felt in that moment? And how do we as humans also navigate when we feel like our world is uprooted in a really fast way?
Max?
Can you repeat the question, please?
I think some of the emotions that come up around surprise, Max, include sometimes it can be fear. It's probably an easy one to pick out. Anxiety, fear, something like this. And it's the same feeling that we come around like when things change, right? And so change incites this like, oh no, what's going on? It's all new. And then when they see this hedge, it's like, is this friend or foe, right? They were worried. They weren't sure what was coming.
Maybe it's just Steve.
Pardon?
Maybe it's just Steve.
Oh, the hedge name. I forgot they named it. Yeah. Yeah. And so they was unsure. They were unsure. They weren't able to know whether it was going to attack them or not. when you're living constantly on edge and living by the number of grapes. When they're in that much of a scarce supply, it seems like you're going to be constantly on alert for what is up, because you have to be constantly foraging to save yourself and keep yourself alive. For me, when I think about what Max was surprised about, I think about like the driving emotion seemed like curiosity for Max. The driving feeling behind that surprise was like, why did they make that choice, that creative choice to tell this story?
Well, I love that surprise or an unexpected response can create that form of surprise or curiosity in people. I think that's a really cool aspect of being surprised.
Yeah, I agree. I
Like
think that's really
this-
healthy.
Yes, correct. This idea of let's ask questions, let's figure out more. This is something new and exciting and different, and I'm surprised by it, and I want to chase all of these things that make it the way it is and learn about them. And I think that's something that comes with being surprised for the first time. Mm-hmm. I think about me watching some of these old horror movies when I was younger.
Ew.
And watching Alien and
Gross.
seeing this alien pop out of this dude, and that surprise of being like, how did that was terrifying, and
No,
I
thank
and I
you.
gotta know how they did that, and going and approaching that, and so I think that's really cool. Or watching like Lord of the Rings for the first time,
I love that.
and being
I can talk about that.
and sitting there and being like, how'd they make Gandalf so tall
He is so
and
tall.
Frodo so short?
Yeah.
Forced
wow.
perspective. It's really cool.
It's really neat.
But I think you learn those things when you're surprised by something, and it sparks that curiosity inside of you. And I think that's a really cool thing that surprise does. But we can't ignore, Vernon's fear that comes with this, of this giant magical thing just popped up here, and I don't know if half our forest is gone.
Well,
And we
it's
had a tough time
interesting-
finding food last year.
Well, it's interesting because Vern seems like the responsible animal in that group of foragers, right? All the rest of them seem like they're a little less concerned with survival than he is. And so he is constantly on the alert and is constantly paying attention. And when you play that role in a group, it often forces you to consider things that others wouldn't, and you become hypersensitive to those things because you believe that's your place, right? And so I believe that Vern is kind of in this situation where surprise to him is more threatening than it is to the others because of the amount of responsibility he holds. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I wonder if people in similar situations who are feel responsible for their families, for their friend groups, for whomever they're with, does that responsibility make surprise less? Is it less possible to have that creative response to surprise, and are you more likely to be surprised, and is that going to elicit more fear when you are in that headspace? Does it make sense to you?
I think it does. It makes me when something is working enough or like working now, there's a fear of change from that.
Yeah.
Even if next year it might not work, or 6 minutes from now it might not work. This idea of, well, it's been working for me. I'm not going to change from this because it's gotten me this far. I don't want any surprises. I want to know exactly what's happening. I want to know exactly how much food I'm going to have. But it almost can act as a hindrance to us being adaptable in a way that is necessary for survival.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's so how do we use this surprise as a way to spark curiosity, to spark inquisitiveness, to facilitate learning, but do it in a way that's also safe, because we can't just go jump into everything that's unknown. We can't just go over the hedge. There's real dangers that were over there. That they had to learn how to navigate. And so how do we make sure we don't lose that curiosity, but also have a little bit of Vern in us and maintain a little bit of that? How do we keep ourselves and our family safe through those processes?
But also, I think what we see through this movie is it drives us a little bit towards balance. We need to have a little bit of Vern, but we also need to have a little bit of RJ,
Just a little bit.
right? But like seriously,
Yeah.
like the balance that comes is we need to sometimes let things go, and sometimes we need to really be intentional about listening to our tail, right? When it vibrates.
Yeah. That doesn't mean manipulate other people to get what you want.
Correct.
That's not the part of RJ
That's
you should be taking on.
correct. I'm not saying we should we need a little bit of manipulation. That's not what we're saying here. I think it's the willingness to cross to the other side, as well as the willingness to listen to our tail.
Yeah. Max, what do you got to add?
No, that was great fodder.
You gonna store that for winter?
Yeah. Thank you for foraging that conversation.
I love it.
It's interesting to me. This is going to be a weird little tangent.
Okay.
That's what we all hope for.
It's still
What you
relevant, but it might not work. And Ben, you were closer to being a teacher than I was, but neither one of us.
There are no elephants in this movie.
Have been teachers, and so it almost feels like that's how education works for us. Is this idea of if we know that surprise can cultivate curiosity and cultivate this wanting to learn, and we typically in our own lives, we remember the things that are surprising to us, right? Like you don't typically remember the color of every house that you drive by, but you do remember when you see that a tree's down on your way to work that you've driven, 100 times.
Sure.
So if we know that we retain surprising things more often and remember them, and those typically ingrain into the stories that we tell, surprising moments in our lives, and those are the things that we latch on to. But in teaching, and I read an article that kind of went through this. It's this understanding of we want to ensure that they're getting these things, and so that doesn't leave a lot of room for surprise. We've got to do this curriculum, and it's got to be taught this way, and it's very similar every single day to make sure that this is something that's familiar. And so, do we lose a lot of that aspect of learning, or do we not use surprise when we're teaching because our tail's wagging a little too much, or we're feeling it too much in our tails? How does that play in? Because the summation of this article that I read was essentially the more surprise that we can bring into the learning environment, and the more we can change things up and make things different, the more people are going to learn and retain information.
No, I totally believe that incorporating surprise into your lesson plans is important. I think that that's pretty integral, frankly. If you know what you're expecting every day, that's inherently going to be boring. And so incorporating surprise doesn't mean that you're not going to, for instance, let's think about it in terms of a sports team, right? If you are leading warm-ups for your group, you're not going to lead the same warm-ups every day. Or you're not going to do, all right, Monday we're going to do this type of warm-up, and then you have your weekly schedule. If you keep that schedule every time, that's fine. But how can you tweak it just a little bit so it's different? So instead of doing these stretches in small groups, let's do it in a circle today. That's enough change to where, this is a little different. This is the same stretch, but we're just going to do it in a different way. And then on Wednesday, we're going to do it in triangles. And then on Friday, we get to freestyle, do your own stretch, right? And so there's this element of we're still going to stretch. We're still going to stretch before we work out and run around, but we're also going to change it up just enough to where it's not exactly what you expected. And I think we can do that in the classroom just as much.
Yeah, Max, what you got? Thanks for raising your hand.
Oh, I saw that you were about to start speaking, and I didn't want to allow that. Ben.
Yes.
You were the person to bring up sports, and I am here to make you regret it. I think that as a civilian, a non-athlete myself, I think that being a sports fan allows me to cultivate surprise within my own life. I love sports, and I follow teams very closely. And there's always a great chance at some great surprises while you are watching a sporting event. So I think that's a really cool metaphor that you just brought up, and that sports is a way to cultivate surprise in your life, not just if you're an athlete yourself or a coach of an athlete, but just as a plebeian who enjoys sports,
Yeah, so is gambling.
Yeah, but that's illegal in a lot more places.
What
do a lot of people gamble on? Sports.
Yeah. So, we're talking about Over the Hedge, and
Hey man, I was just expanding your metaphor.
Well, speaking of over the hedge, do we see that this is also this element of surprise is can be used to rejuvenate relationships, whether it's romantic or familial, but bringing in things that kind of break up the mundane or something that can create strong points of connection, can create stories together, can create moments together. And so that element of surprise can be really helpful in building relationships over time.
It's my favorite element. Way cooler than carbon.
Or boron.
Correct.
Anyway, so one of the things that I like about surprise that I noticed in this was I was like, in the same way that Max was surprised by the direction of using space as a vehicle for story, I was surprised at how unsurprised I was about hearing the HOA jokes that were in this. So can we talk about HOAs for a second? Rather, can I vent about HOAs for a second?
Yes.
So HOAs, homeowners associations,
Thank you.
Seeping with
are
capitalism.
the worst. One of the Sunshine. What is the premise of an HOA?
To maintain property value.
To maintain property
That is the
value,
only
right?
purpose.
And so what like this joke about 2.5 inches of grass versus 2 inches of grass that was like a throwaway conversation that Homegirl was having on the phone.
That's a real thing that people have experienced.
That the reason that like is a thing that lands in this movie is because that's real. I had a friend that put up a sign that in her yard that was, I think, something along the lines of Black Lives Matter. And the homeowners association was like, you have to take that down. And they were like, why? And what happened was she followed up with the homeowners association. Can you help me understand why I have to take this down? Because signs aren't allowed. Can you show me where in the like all the literature, where does it say I cannot have this sign? They couldn't do it. They still made her take the sign down. It was like this whole like big deal. And it's one of those things where I'm like, y'all, it is a sign that is helping people feel welcome. And you're telling me that you can't do that? Oh, I know why. Racism. This is bad.
When it always gets pinned on, so then someone else could put up a Confederate flag sign, and that's not okay. You're like, well, those are two very different things.
You think?
So, but HOAs, again, they are, how do we keep homeostasis? How do we make things look good? How do we keep certain people out so that we can...
Down with the patriarchy.
So that we
down
can
with
maintain
capitalism.
our value, perceived value. And this touches on it. Like it touches on gentrification in this movie. It
sure does.
Or this idea of like, we are going to kick living things out. We are going to build our presence here.
Yep.
And then we are going to demonize
colonization
and villainize
right?
this idea of the original people or animals that were here.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, it's not great. It's not great.
That's what suburbs are, like white flight, you know what I mean?
Yes.
So this idea of, we need to go to a safe place away from other people.
Yeah.
When really they mean people that don't look like them.
Yes.
And there's a lot of laws that have made that possible over time. And specific groups of people haven't been able to get rent. And
so I'm sad that I was not surprised by the 2.5-inch grass joke that they threw into the movie. I'm sad that I was not surprised by that.
No, there was a lot of language that the villain, the HOA president, says that were dog whistles to racism.
And granted, to be fair, it was quote played up, but at the same time, like
I've met HOA people that are.
I know
that wasn't hyperbolic.
It was meant to be,
but it's not like I've dealt and have seen, people who are that bad. And if that's the only thing you do, right? Like,
then you need other things.
You need other things to do.
Okay, Max, you have any other moments of surprise that you noticed from this movie?
Well, here's a new question that we could pontificate for a little bit. As I mentioned earlier, I kind of viewed this movie through more of a lens of pleasant surprise.
Oh, interesting.
But one thing that we saw toward the end of the movie is RJ, after like being kind of selfish and using all of these foragers to get a log full of food to bring back to Vincent the bear, he realizes that how welcoming and how much like a family the foragers have become to him, and realizes that he needs to go back and help the foragers out after the exterminator captures all of the foragers. So I think it is safe to say that Vern and the gang were pleasantly surprised to see that RJ has come back after his moment or several moments of being selfish. So ultimately, what I'm getting at is pleasant surprise driven by a lack of expectations, and how do we feel about that?
I think all surprises are based upon our expectations, right? And so we go through life cultivating, creating expectations based off of that. I mean, that's what trust is. It's our expectation of how the other person will react, right? And the more trust we have, the more we can truly expect the way that they will respond, and not necessarily what they will say, but how they will respond in terms of like whether they will accept what we did or not, or accept us even though we may have done something else that is not okay. So yeah, I think it's all about expectations. And I think that one of the things I love about this moment is that kindness leads to kindness, right? If you are deceiving, you don't expect kindness. So RJ, after he has been deceiving this group of foragers for like over the course of a week, they built him everything that he ever wanted and talked about and all the things he dreamed about, and they gave it to him. And he was so surprised because he was living in his deceit. Whereas kindness, if you are in kindness, living with kindness, giving kindness, expecting kindness back is kind of where you live. And so to me, in a way, it feels like the more deceptive we are, the more we are surprised that we can encounter good things in the world, which makes me wonder, like, oh, well, maybe if I put more good out into the world, maybe I will be surrounded by it more, you know?
That almost speaks to like this spiral, this downward spiral that happens of I don't want to feel disappointed. I don't want to feel the pain that comes with someone not meeting my expectations. So as a protection measure, I'm going to set low expectations, which then in turn people tend to treat people as if they have low expectations for them, and it kind of bubbles up and kind of starts to, we see this downward spiral. So I guess the question I'm asking is, do we set low expectations for people so that we're not disappointed and not surprised when they don't meet them, and then do we treat people differently because of that?
I think yes. I absolutely think yes. I think we treat people differently based off what we expect from them.
Because you see this group treat RJ like one of them.
Because he has been acting like that.
Correct.
Right?
And thus allows him to kind of live into that. Like he feels that we accept the love we think we deserve, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like he doesn't feel this, he doesn't feel that love, but eventually he gets there because they they treated him with the best intentions, as if he was doing the best, and they were giving him the most general
and I think that was
generous assumption, right?
Powerful enough to make it so that when he was confronted with the choice, he was like, no, that was more important to me.
But how do we balance that aspect of it too? Because here's does that go too far where you then have too high of expectations for someone that are unfair or unrealistic, and thus, they're not able to ever meet your expectations? I almost think, parents maybe who put a lot of expectations onto their children, that ends up being unfair, and so like they never meet those standards.
That's probably my biggest worry for myself. And like I know that I am one that holds high expectations of people, and I like if I ever have the opportunity to raise children, I think that will be one of the things that I'm constantly asking myself.
So how do you do that, right? How do you assume the best, set high expectations to help people live into those high expectations because they can, and then not go past it to where you're setting unrealistic expectations for people?
Well,
do you alone have to set those, or should you be setting those expectations in tandem with those individuals?
I think the difference is my expectations and my love for you are not the same. Like if you meeting my expectations and my love for you are not the same.
Yeah, so you hitting those expectations does not dictate the care that I give to you.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's where I think that's the line, is when we are working with people, and there's a trope in like so many different television shows, and especially animes, where there's this character that is just overwhelmingly good, and they say everything right, they're incredibly forgiving, and then they're also incredibly, quote, naive. But at the same time, what happens is their goodness overcomes their naivety. And so it's really interesting in that trope. But for me, when I think about like how I want to raise my kids. I want my kids to do well. I want my kids to be well. I want my kids to be good. I want to make sure that the people that I'm interacting with are good. I'm going to have like feedback is a function of respect. I'm going to respect my children enough to tell them when they screw up, and I'm going to have enough love for them that when they screw up, I'm going to forgive that, and I'm going to have there's going to be mercy, there's going to be grace, right? And I think that it's balancing those things. And how do you provide that grace? How do you provide that feedback without judgment? Because that's what's harming, right? Is when you are raising that kid with high expectations, when you are talking to your friends, holding someone accountable with high expectations, and then you do so without doing it in a compassionate and loving way, and you only are saying, I believe that you could have done better. I like it's like you. There's this. The way we do it is important.
You should have been valedictorian, and you disappointed me because you're not.
Yeah,
right?
that's not how I'd go about it.
That's not the way.
No.
So yeah, because RJ I think is an example of this character that some people didn't believe in him at all, or some people saw him as only this thief.
It would have been
and some
incredibly easy to write him off and
correct.
be like, nope, he made a mistake. I don't want that in my life. And then they welcomed him back.
There should also be some like accountability for like, hey,
Sure.
you left us out to dry. We love that you came back. And
they were that tension there was there. Like they were mad at him. They were like, nope, we're not letting you in this.
Yeah.
We're going to let you get eaten by that bear.
Yep.
like it's like, and so that tension was there, and it's just really interesting to talk about. Like,
yeah, Stella was not happy with him.
she wasn't. She made her dress up like a cat.
I love the kind of surprise of Stella's being accepted for who she is after the stink. After she stunk up the house,
I cannot
and the
smell
cat was
anything.
like, that has no effect on how I feel about you. And like that's just kind of a nice moment for them to be like, I just like you for who you are.
Yeah.
I wrote that one down too.
No, that's
Were you surprised by it, or what was your take
I thought
on the surprise?
that was a moment of pleasant surprise
From her or from you?
from all of the above.
for her.
For her.
Interesting.
For her.
Interesting.
That gave her quite the confidence boost.
Yeah.
It did.
Well, we heard earlier in the show, like, oh, you think we're ever going to find someone who is X, Y, and Z and can't smell? And all of a sudden, she's like, oh, wait, you can't smell? Like, that's like the biggest hurdle. And it's just like, it only goes to show that when you have high expectations, sometimes if you put yourself out there, you can find some of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Other big moments. Max, what about you? You got any other ones you want to lift up?
So we just we did the Stella bit a second ago, where some of the references to other movies I thought were quite surprising and the
Pretty
Stella,
good. Yeah.
the Rosebud,
Rosebud.
William Shatner at his best, honestly.
It's fun little moments in there. I kind of want to dive into how we can use surprise and new things and the unknown as a way to manipulate, because we see that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's pretty common. Politically, most politicians seem to rely on a lack of information to be able to sway you, or this surprising new thing to sway you. And we see RJ do that at the beginning. We see him use this as like, no, that's just a hedge. And on the other side of it, a bunch of food.
Joy.
Which which we probably should understand is not healthy for those animals to be eating all that stuff, right? So
I mean, they talk about how it's going to build a great layer of fat.
so I just
Keeps them very warm in the winter.
so that's not but that's good for him, right? But we can use surprising new things and novelty as a way to manipulate or like get people to do what we want. And I think that that's something we have to acknowledge that someone might be doing in specific moments. That we might be seeing a lack of information or using new information incorrectly to convey a whole bunch of people into doing something.
Which is part of the reason there's such a call for media literacy, right? We are responsible for the information that we are sharing, and when we just like liberally go on there and like tweet and retweet all these things that may or may not be true, we are spreading false information, right? And that false information directly correlates to how people respond to the event, right? If people are seeing a bunch of things that say it is, don't like, I don't know, if they see something is not okay, like, oh, don't go to Harris Teeter because of X, Y, and Z. It's a grocery store for those of you that are like,
It's the COVID related stuff, right? Like how many articles
probably
or
a
things
better
or stuff
example.
gets pushed out that's just kind of like, this is a study. And you're like, yeah, but if you read that study, that is not the that headline does not accurately depict
first
the
COVID
study.
case found in tigers at the zoo.
Right. Or, yeah, I mean, Kevin Sorbo, the guy who played Hercules back in the day, recently tweeted something along the lines of, it's been 10 months, shouldn't all the non-mask wearers be dead? And you're just kind of like, that's not how it works. And like at this point, you should know this. And so I've got a lot of concerns and comments. So it's just kind of like, those are the things where you're just kind of like, we see that this is something that when something new happens or people are latching on to just different pieces of information or cherry picking pieces of information to kind of create a narrative. And we see that when things are new and surprising or we get scared, right? If we get into our fight, flight, or freeze, we're looking for a lifeline, even if it's not truly attached to where we need it to be attached to. And so that was something that struck home for me as I saw RJ using the unknown of the Hedge to kind of manipulate the foragers.
Max, have you ever used surprise to manipulate someone?
Not as far as I know.
Feel surprised when you find out you're manipulated.
Yeah, this is true. I think the whole group was surprised.
I think they were.
Yeah.
I think there were. Any other big moments from this movie that are worth highlighting? We haven't even talked about the exterminator yet.
Well, it's because
his character wasn't very surprising.
Yeah, like it's just.
Well, he attempts to use the element of surprise to capture some vermin.
Nailed it. It's my favorite element.
It's very true.
But RJ's pretty smart, and like he must have this life before the movie began, of like understanding how like traps work and lasers and like.
Oh, that laser pointer bit to get the squirrel where he needed to go was genius.
Genius.
Yeah,
truly.
Yeah, RJ's a learned raccoon.
It's true.
Street smarts.
Well read.
Yeah, were you surprised by that?
No, I mean raccoons are.
Tell me more about surprise.
I guess raccoons are smart, but this was a lone wolf raccoon. Did you know raccoon poop is apparently like poisonous?
Wow. No, I didn't.
It's a very surprising fact to learn.
I've learned that through a podcast I listened to.
I feel like most
it bending,
poop.
not
I feel like most poop is poisonous. Like you shouldn't eat most.
Yeah, I
poop.
don't think you should eat poop.
No, like I'm saying, like the smell, like being around raccoon poop can be poisonous. Like it can release
toxins
that can
Wow.
poison you.
Is it poisonous? I thought it's. I guess ingestion through smell or through like.
I don't know about. Yeah. Anyway,
It's still poisonous.
You're not supposed to like mess with raccoon poop, you know?
can we talk about these young Girl Scout type people that this scene with the Girl Scouts?
Sure, let's talk about them.
I'm that for lack of a better word, that's what I will use since that's the trope they're falling into. But so when RJ is planning
A heist.
a heist in which it is dependent upon these young ladies responding a certain way, right? And they don't respond that way. So I think it's interesting when you go into a situation expecting a specific result, right? And your whole plan hinges on that expectation. All of a sudden, things go awry. And so what I'm thinking about this is you are going to have a negative surprise response if you are locked into only one way you can go in and it doesn't go that way. Because what happens is they're like, oh, rabid squirrel. And they're like, nope, I have the manual for a rabid squirrel. And then they proceed to beat him. and that's not the way that you expect.
I don't think that's
them
also
to
in the
respond.
manual. I don't think the manual for dealing with a rabid
Did
squirrel
you see
says,
it? It was in the manual.
It said beat him.
No, but like
I saw his
like,
picture was in the manual.
They had a picture of like avoid and
But
do. Like, here are the steps you follow. That it wasn't written out for us to read, but it was there.
I don't think macing the squirrel and beating it
But
is,
it's interesting
is how you should handle
but
that.
they came. I don't know. They were prepared because that was in the manual. They were not prepared for apparently a turtle.
They didn't know it was a turtle. He came out of a shell.
Yeah, which is not possible.
I don't think that's possible.
By the way,
It's not.
that is
This-
an
this-
exoskeleton.
Yeah, it's fused.
It is literally their body.
It's their body.
Yeah. It's not something. It's not like a hermit crab.
Correct.
You got it, patrons. Don't go telling all these people you know.
Turtle
'cause-
butts don't look like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Make sure you know that after you listen to this podcast, turtles cannot come out of their shell.
Who's the best
So,
fictional turtle?
I
out
think
there?
I'm just saying, don't underestimate young
Is it
ladies.
Franklin?
Best fiction? It might be Crush.
Crush is a good one. There's also the Ninja Turtles.
Right. But then you have to choose from 4.
But people love Franklin.
Franklin's a solid fictional turtle.
Oh. Is Vern bottom tier?
Dude, don't you
What
have a
what
turtle
about
named
Frank-
Vern?
Franklin. What
You
about
do
Franklin?
have a turtle named Vern, don't you?
Like Franklin the turtle?
That's what.
That's what I just said.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
Don't you have a turtle named Vern?
Tortoise.
It's a tortoise, sunshine. How dare you?
It's amphibious.
Percy and Vern.
It's ambidextrous.
I get it. Percy and Vern are what Doc Brown names his kids after in Back to the Future 3, right?
That's not what they're named after, no.
They named after Percy Jackson.
Oh.
No.
I don't know the
They're
characters of
older
that.
than Percy Jackson.
They are
It's
older
like a
than Percy
Galapagos. It's a
Jackson.
Galapagos thing, right?
No. They're Aldabra tortoises. Patrons, did you know that our family has 3 tortoises? And we
The
also
Bending
have...
Not Breaking family
Yeah.
has 3 tortoises.
Anyway, all right.
There's a Vern Percy on Facebook. Is that who
Are
they're
there
named
any
after?
other moments of surprise in the movie Over the Hedge that y'all would like to talk about before we move on to our devotion and our gratitude?
It's a very short runtime.
I want to. Was that a surprise to you? That it was,
An hour 23 is a very
It's 2 hours and 6 minutes, 3 minutes.
an
Yeah.
hour and 23 minutes, not 123 minutes.
Oh, I thought you said 100.
it's 80. It's 83 minutes.
Yeah, it's an 83-minute movie.
I was pretty okay with that. Here's a moment of pleasant surprise. So we talked about this being one of the greatest Eugene Levy, Catherine O'Hara vehicles of all time.
You talked about that.
I don't think we agree.
Well, guess what? Here's a moment of surprise. Listed, if you watch the in credits, listed in those credits, we talked about Schitt's Creek earlier as well. Guess who is a lighting artist for this movie?
Alexis.
Dan Levy.
Aw, very
bebes.
nice.
Dan Levy the bebe.
Yes. So that was
Have
neat.
y'all heard
How do you
the
do lighting on a?
There was a TikTok.
Don't worry
where,
about it.
on an animated movie.
Have y'all seen the-
I'm guessing it was like, oh, Eugene Levy's son wants to be in this movie, like be a part of this movie. How old was Dan Levy in 2006?
Have y'all seen the TikTok where Catherine O'Hara's character from Schitt's Creek is singing Santa Bebe, except it's not her singing it. It's some dude that's really funny in her accent.
I think I have seen
It's
that, yes.
hilarious. Santa Bebe.
He would have been 23 at this point.
Yeah, this might have been. Maybe this was his first movie job.
He might have done something on it. There might be lighting with animation. Like maybe you have to worry about like where the light's coming from
Shadows
and
and-
animating.
yeah.
Yeah, I get it. Schitt's Creek is so good.
Agreed. This is what launched Dan Levy's career.
Over the Hedge. You think that's his first credit?
People forget that Over the Hedge launched Dan Levy's career.
And with
that's-
that, what we're going to do is we're going
and
to take a
that's-
short break.
That's
and
why
we
it's
will
one of the
come
best
back to
Eugene Levy,
you
Catherine O'Hara
shortly
vehicles.
He was a
in
wedding guest
a
in
minute
Kelly Clarkson's Behind These
with
Hazel
a
Eyes video.
devotion on
I love that song.
air and surprise.
Here I
Air
am,
and surprise.
again.
And so we'll be back
torn
momentarily.
into pieces, can't defend. Surprised you are the one. Yeah, we'll be back soon.
He's not listed on IMDb as that being a credit for him.
It could be a different. I mean, Dan Levy's probably a common enough name that I just assumed it was Eugene's
It was, yeah, but
son.
no. We'll be right back.
Now that we have finally had a chance to take a break, I'm really excited to bring us back to our devotion time where we talk about surprise and we're going to talk about air this week with our devotion. So what we've done is, theoretically, for those of you who need a reminder, we're setting a goal or intention using the element of air as a vehicle to talk about surprise, and we're going to set a goal that way. So Max, Sunshine, who wants to give their goal first?
I can give mine first.
You got it, bud.
So let's take a walk here. Toward the beginning of the episode, Sunshine talked about when he was defining what surprise is. He gave the popping of a balloon as an example
I knew he listened.
to the episode that we're doing. Sure.
Yeah, not the ones he's just producing.
Yeah. He talked about the popping of a balloon as sometimes being the cause of a fear-based surprise. But I thought about that a little bit more. And after the initial scare of the pop of the balloon, what is that often followed by?
Laughter.
Laughter. Very good, Sunshine.
I'm doing
You're
it.
such a good student.
So I think that's a really cool thing to think about, and I think that that is a way to remind me to just because a balloon full of air got popped, it may be scary, but I can laugh at myself afterwards, and maybe to be more receptive to surprise and remember that surprises are just little challenges that maybe we can laugh about later. And that's going to be my goal, is to be receptive to surprise and turn it into an opportunity for growth and laughter.
That's what we're going to do this month for Max. Sunshine, what about you?
The idea of how do we spice up education, I run a lot of youth programs, and I think it's something that I can focus on in the upcoming few weeks, is this idea of how do we create more surprising turns to those programs to make them more engaging, to breathe a little life into them, if you will. And so how do we make that happen? So having a heavy focus on small changes that we can make and small tweaks we can make inside of those programs to create a more engaging experience is something that I really want to focus on this week.
Great. Oh, I thought you were going to give us a little example.
No, I haven't thought of them yet. I just that's why I'm going to focus on them this week.
Oh, okay. So next month we're going to hear some of your examples.
Yeah, I doubt it. But,
So, for me,
if it comes up.
I was like, what is surprising in relation to air? And I was like, tornadoes. Tornadoes are surprising. They come out of nowhere.
The movie Twister.
Yeah, terrifying, right?
With Holly Hunter.
That's my
Helen Hunt.
Yeah.
That's okay. I was like, that's my biggest horror movie right there is Twister, right? Gosh. So
You got to watch some other horror movies. There are definitely
do
some
I?
scarier ones out
I
there.
don't think I need to.
Sharknado.
Anyway, tornadoes kind of erupt
1 through 4.
out of nowhere, and I think that oftentimes we don't realize that we're out of air until it's gone, right? Like, it's one of those things we don't realize that we're not. And so just being more mindful of the air that is around us, being more grateful for the calm that we exist in now, rather than like really terrified and surprised when the tornado comes, because tornadoes always are going to come. Like, they're not just going to stop existing. But it's one of those things where, like, I can be grateful for the calm that I'm in now. I can be grateful for the things that I am currently taking for granted and cultivate a little bit more gratitude, kind of like our gratitude practice, which I think that's a pretty good segue into a gratitude practice, because, I'm going to cultivate some gratitude around like my everyday, but now we're going to go into gratitude. I'm just saying, it's a pretty neat segue.
Keep going strong. What's your gratitude this week?
My gratitude this week is for Vern.
Vern,
the turtle, who is also a reptile. And it is hard being the fun killer and doing things that you believe to be right and that you know that others won't like when you believe it is the right thing to do. And it's hard to kind of be alone and stand up for that. And that's what integrity is. It's choosing courage over comfort and practicing your values over just professing them. And I think that Vern really shows us what that looks like. And could he have done it differently? Sure. Could there have been more communication? Yes. But I'm really grateful that he stood for what he believed to be right. And that's why I'm grateful for Vern. What about y'all?
I'm grateful for the mom driving the van that hits the possum.
allegedly.
Yes. She had to deal with kids trying to touch the possum. She had to deal with an HOA president in her face screaming to her about the possum. And I think she did it with a lot of patience. and
I agree.
grace. And so I want to give her a little bit of gratitude and thanks because none of those things are easy. I can't imagine living in that neighborhood with that HOA president is easy. And so
Yeah.
props to her. I'm lifting her up. That's my gratitude.
I think she needs that.
She dealt with a lot of surprises and dealt with them with a lot of grace.
If I were her, I'd be really grateful for you lifting that up. But I'm not. Max?
I definitely don't have that same amount of patience sometimes.
Nope.
So normally y'all do a good job of asking me during a Max's Choice episode, Max, why did you make this choice? But you never did this time around, so I'm going
I
to...
already knew the answer.
Well, our patrons don't. So while I'm sharing
Ben.
my gratitude, I want to share a little bit more about why I chose this film, because clearly none of us loved it or even like it necessarily. But
Why are you chirping?
he was doing the tune of a song that is in this movie. Speaking of songs that are in this movie, all of the songs in this movie were written by my favorite musician of all time, Mr. Ben Folds. So today, I want to share my gratitude for Ben Folds for doing something a little bit outside of his element, writing songs for a movie.
Rocking the Suburbs?
He had never done anything like that before. So I want to share my gratitude for Ben Folds for being an excellent musician with eclectic talents and for maybe going a little bit outside of his comfort zone and doing songs written for the specific purpose of being in a movie. I think that's pretty neat, and I'm gracious for all people who are willing to go outside of their comfort zone and put some creative art and good into the world. So thank you, Ben Folds, for providing the music to this film.
And if you're curious, is y'all's podcast about Ben Folds still around somewhere that they can find?
I think it is, yeah.
Funnily enough, Max and Sunshine did a 4-episode arc. Was it how many episodes?
I mean,
It was more than 4.
probably 12 episodes.
12 episode
all on
arc.
Ben Folds.
I would
all
guess.
on Ben
I would guess
Folds.
less than 12. It's however many albums.
Several album episodes
And Ben Folds 5.
around Ben Folds that you can go find, and the host of that is the Arc of E,
It's the Music Arc podcast.
the Music
It's, I
Arc
think,
podcast.
It's called
if you
Lost
can
in
go
the
find it.
Folds.
Lost in the Folds
in the
is the
Folds.
little sub show.
I'm not there, so I can understand why you wouldn't listen. But if you're interested in hearing them talk about Ben Folds, that is a great way for you to hear more about Ben Folds.
Absolutely.
And you can hear more about Bending Not Breaking and us, because y'all are patrons and you know everything already, on, all the Instagrams and TikToks and things. And make sure, we love it when y'all comment and respond to things. So don't be scared. We like hearing from you. All those little things tell us that we're, doing something that is valuable. So, we'd like it if you did. BNB_pod.
Yeah.
Send us voicemails. Voicemails are great.
Rate and review our podcast on
Ooh,
Apple.
if you haven't
or...
done that yet, that's a really helpful way of helping us. We'd love that. Yeah. Nicely worded. If you write a cool one, we'll read it on the podcast.
Absolutely. Well, thank y'all so much. Max, thank you. Thank you for choosing this. New Max's Choice will be up next month.
That's right.
We'll come at you with something new. Maybe an episode of Schitt's Creek. Maybe.
We already did a Eugene Levy, Catherine O'Hara vehicle.
Maybe we'll do a musical next time.
When Ben Folds writes a musical, we'll definitely do it.
Maybe we can do a Waitress from Sarah Bareilles, the Broadway show.
Or 36 Questions with Jesse
The
Shelton.
world is our oyster. Y'all, thank you so much for listening. I'm Sunshine.
I also really like Wicked. It's a great musical.
Mm-hmm. Whose choice is it, though?
Max's.
Okay.
You often just need a little bit of a little help.
Nah.
Because you take forever to make choices.
Are we in a rush?
Sometimes, yes.
I disagree.
And this has been Pruitt, and this has been Bending Not Breaking. Until next time, be well and do good.
Thank you for listening.
Bye-bye.
Max, say goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you, Max.